I've been married to Lisa for 6 years. On the surface, we seemed like a perfect couple, the kind of partnership everyone envied. We had a nice house in the suburbs, two beautiful kids, and our friends often said we were the couple that had it all together. But underneath that picture-perfect facade, things had been off for a while. It started subtly, little things that I brushed aside. Lisa was more irritable than usual, snapping at me for the smallest reasons. She began spending more time on her phone, often stepping out of the room to take calls that she claimed were work-related. I noticed she started dressing up more often, even when we weren't going anywhere special. I chalked it up to a midlife crisis, or maybe she just wanted to feel good about herself. I had no idea that the changes were signs of something much darker. One evening, I was cleaning out the garage when I stumbled upon an envelope that had fallen behind a box. It was addressed to Lisa, and against my better judgment, I opened it. Inside were hotel receipts from a fancy place downtown, dated just a few weeks prior. My heart raced. As I scanned the names on the receipts, one of them was a man named Mark, someone I had seen a few times at work events but didn't really know well. The realization hit me like a freight train. I felt sick. I confronted Lisa that night. I waited until the kids were asleep, sat her down in the living room, and I told her what I had found. Her reaction was nothing like I expected. Instead of remorse, she laughed it off, claiming it was a mistake or a misunderstanding. I felt a surge of anger. How could she be so nonchalant? Lisa, these are hotel receipts. You think I'm going to believe it was just a work thing? I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. She rolled her eyes at me as if I were a child having a tantrum. You're overreacting, Mike. Can't a woman have a little fun without her husband getting all jealous? Her tone was dismissive, like I was the one in the wrong. I didn't know how to process what I was hearing. This was my wife, the mother of my children, the woman I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, confusion. How had we reached this point? All those years, all the memories, suddenly felt tainted. In that moment, I realized I had two choices. I could either confront this head-on or let it fester and destroy me from within. I chose to confront it. I told Lisa I wanted to go to couples therapy. I thought maybe a neutral party could help us navigate this mess. She reluctantly agreed, but I could tell she was just going through the motions. The first therapy session was awkward. I sat there, my heart pounding, as Lisa fidgeted next to me. When the therapist asked her how she felt about our relationship, she went on and on about how busy life had gotten, how she felt unappreciated. I bit my tongue, not wanting to interrupt. That was when she finally admitted it. She had been seeing Mark, and it had been going on for months. I thanked the therapist and fired my wife that day. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders, even though the pain was just beginning. The realization hit me that this wasn't just about losing my wife. It was about losing the life I thought we had built together. How could she do this to us? I spent the next few days in a fog, replaying the moments leading to this betrayal. My heart ached, not just from the pain of the infidelity, but from the emotional assault that had come with it. I was furious at her betrayal, but I was also furious at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I didn't want to wallow in self-pity. I needed a plan. I needed to take control of my life again. I started thinking about revenge, how I could make her understand the pain she had caused me. I didn't want to stoop to her level, but the idea of watching her squirm under the weight of her choice was tempting. I had to remind myself that I was better than that, but it was hard. As I began plotting my next steps, I realized that I was still in love with the woman I married, but I also knew that the woman I had known was gone. To move forward, I needed to figure out who I was without her. I was no longer just her husband. I was a man scorned, and I wanted my life back. That's when I started to put my plan into action. I had to make sure I wouldn't just be a victim in this situation. I wouldn't let her get away with treating me this way. It was time for me to reclaim my power, and I was determined to do just that. After that fateful therapy session, I was a man on a mission. I needed to gather my thoughts and emotions, and more importantly, I needed to gather evidence. Lisa had built an elaborate facade, and I was going to pull it apart piece by piece. The betrayal cut deep, and the pain was still fresh, but I was no longer just a heartbroken husband. I was a detective in my own life story. The first thing I did was start documenting everything. I bought a journal and began chronicling every suspicious behavior, every late night, every excuse that Lisa had given me over the months. At first, it felt cathartic. Writing it all down helped to clear my mind, but it also made it painfully clear how deep her lies went. I couldn't believe I had turned a blind eye for so long. I reached out to a couple of my close friends, confiding in them about the affair. Their reactions varied from shock to outrage, but they all rallied around me. They advised me to focus on myself, to use this as an opportunity to rediscover who I was outside of being Lisa's husband. I started hitting the gym more, finding solace in the physical exertion. It was a great way to channel my anger and frustration, and I felt stronger with every passing day. One Friday evening, while Lisa was working late at a supposed meeting, I decided to do some sleuthing of my own. I rummaged through her things, searching for anything that might lead me to more evidence of her infidelity. I found her old phone hidden in a drawer, and against my better judgment I turned it on. The screen lit up, revealing a trove of messages that made my stomach turn. There were flirty texts between Lisa and Mark, complete with innuendos and promises to meet up. My heart raced as I read through the conversations, each word hammering home the reality of her betrayal. In one particularly, graphic exchange, she had even sent him a photo that I couldn't bear to look at for too long. This was it. I had the proof I needed. But instead of feeling vindicated, I felt consumed by a mix of anger and sadness. I had trusted her with my heart, my life, and here she was, sharing intimate moments with another man. I wanted to scream, to confront her, but I held back. I knew I had to stick to my plan for revenge, and confronting her now would only derail that. Amidst my emotional turmoil, I discovered a strange resolve. I would make sure I was ready when the time came to confront her again. I took that weekend to gather my thoughts, strategize, and solidify my approach. I needed to confront her with undeniable evidence and show her that I was not going to be a passive victim in this situation. If she thought she could get away with this, she was sorely mistaken. Over the next week, I played the part of the perfect husband. I cooked dinner, helped the kids with their homework, and even smiled when she talked about her work. Inside, though, I was a storm of emotions, preparing to execute my plan while maintaining an exterior of calm. I didn't want to tip her off. The day of reckoning came when I decided to invite her for a dinner date at our favorite restaurant. The kids were with their grandparents for the night, and it was the perfect opportunity for a heart-to-heart. I wanted to catch her off guard, to allow her to relax before I dropped the bomb. As we sat down, I let the ambience of the restaurant work its magic. Romantic lighting, soft music, and a bottle of wine. Lisa was chatting away, seemingly oblivious to the tension brewing beneath the surface. I managed to keep my nerves in check as we ordered our food, making small talk while I mentally prepared for what was to come. Once the appetizers arrived, I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my chest. "Lisa, there's something I need to discuss with you," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "It's about us." She looked up from her plate, a curious expression on her face. "What about us, Mike? Everything's fine, isn't it?" I took a deep breath. "Not really. I know about Mark. I have proof." Her face fell as the color drained from it. "What are you talking about?" she stammered, clearly caught off guard. There was a moment of silence as I pulled out my phone, scrolling through the messages I had saved. I slid the phone across the table, watching her face as she read the words that had previously been hidden. Her eyes widened, and I could see all the bravado she had put on crumbling in front of me. This isn't what it looks like," exclaimed, but I could see the panic in her eyes. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Oh, really? Because it looks like you've been lying to me for months. You've betrayed everything we built together." The look of horror on her face was something I had never seen before, and it felt oddly satisfying. But there was no joy in it for me, only an overwhelming sense of betrayal and hurt. This was the woman I had loved, the woman I thought I knew. Lisa tried to backpedal, spinning her web of lies. "I swear, Mike, it was just a fling. It didn't mean anything, you have to believe me." But I didn't want to hear it. I had spent enough time listening to her excuses and lies. "No, Lisa, I don't have to believe you. What you did was cruel, and I'm done with your games." As the reality of the moment settled in, I knew I had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The facade of our marriage had shattered, and I was ready to take the next step toward reclaiming my life. I wanted her to understand the magnitude of her betrayal, but I also knew that whatever came next would change everything forever. This was just the beginning of my journey, and I was determined to make it count. I would emerge from this stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace whatever came next. The pain was still fresh, but I was ready to turn it into power. I was no longer just a heartbroken husband. I was a man ready for revenge. The confrontation at the restaurant marked a pivotal moment in my life. Lisa's face turned from shock to desperation, and it was clear that she hadn't anticipated that I would actually confront her. Evidence. The cold blue glow of my phone illuminated her features as she scrolled through her own messages, her facade of confidence crumbling with each passing second. "Please, Mike," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was just feeling so lost in Mark. He was there for me." "Lost?" I shot back incredulously. "You mean you felt lost, so you decided to jump into bed with another man? That's your excuse?" It was hard to keep the anger from boiling over. "You betrayed our family, Lisa. You betrayed me." I watched as she tried to gather herself, her eyes darting around the restaurant as though searching for someone to rescue her from the situation. "You don't understand," she said, her voice lowering as if she were afraid of being overheard. "I was unhappy. You were so focused on work and I felt neglected. I don't know how to explain it. Neglected." The gall of her to spin this into a tale of her own victimhood was astonishing. I had worked hard to provide for our family, and now it felt as though I was being punished for my dedication. "You could have talked to me, Lisa. We could have worked through it, but instead you chose to cheat on me." I could see the gears turning in her mind as she scrambled for damage control. "I'll do anything to make it right," she said, her voice wavering. "We can go to therapy together again. I'll cut off all communication with him. Just please don't leave me." My heart ached at her desperation, but I couldn't let myself feel sympathy. This wasn't just a mistake, it was a betrayal that had shattered any trust we had. "You think this can just be fixed like that, by pretending it never happened? You've destroyed the foundation of our relationship, Lisa." I let the silence hang for a moment. "I'm done with this. I can't trust you anymore. I won't live in a house built on lies." I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I had spent too long feeling vulnerable and weak. It was time for me to take control. "Fine," Lisa snapped, her voice rising in indignation. "If that's how you feel, then maybe we shouldn't even be together." The defensiveness in her tone was alarming. There was a part of me that was shocked that she could so easily dismiss the years we'd spent together, but another part of me recognized the truth in her words. Perhaps we really were beyond repair. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the whirlwind of emotions inside me. "Maybe you're right. Maybe we shouldn't be together," I said slowly, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. "This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about our kids. They deserve better than this." Lisa's face shifted from anger to panic. "What are you saying? You can't just throw away everything we've built. We have kids. We can fix this." I could see her scrambling for solutions, but I remained unfazed. "You had a chance to fix this, Lisa, and you chose to betray my trust. I won't allow you to drag me down with you. I've made my decision." The rest of the dinner passed in silence, tension hanging thick in the air. Lisa's attempts to reach out to hold my hand were met with cold indifference as I focused on the meal in front of me. The food tasted bland, like ashes in my mouth. I didn't really care about eating. I just wanted to get through the evening without losing my cool. We left the restaurant without exchanging another word. I drove home with my mind racing, the reality of our situation crashing down on me. The house we had built together felt like a prison, and the life I had known was crumbling before my eyes. But I also felt invigorated. I had finally taken a stand. I wouldn't allow her to manipulate me or sweep this under the rug. When we got home, Lisa tried to engage me in conversation, but I was done. "I need space," I said, cutting her off. "I'll be staying with Greg for a while." "I can't believe you're doing this," she said, her voice rising again. "You're just going to run away instead of working on things." "Working on things? You mean pretending everything is fine while you still have your affair?" I retorted, my voice echoing through the empty halls of our home. "I can't do this, Lisa. I need to think. I need to be away from you." I grabbed a bag and started packing some essentials, throwing in clothes, toiletries, anything that I could take with me. Lisa stood there watching, a mix of anger and desperation in her eyes. "You think this is going to make anything better? Leaving won't fix what's broken." "I'm not leaving to run away. I'm leaving to figure out what I want. I can't even look at you right now without feeling sick," I replied tersely. I could feel her tears welling up as I turned to walk out. "Mike, please," she called after me, but I stepped through the door and closed it behind me. The weight of the world felt lighter somehow as I drove away from our home. I was still reeling from the betrayal, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving towards something, my own sense of freedom. Staying at Greg's was a welcome distraction. He listened as I poured my heart out, and for the first time in days I felt a sense of clarity. We talked about everything, my pain, my anger, and my plans for the future. He encouraged me to take my time and think about my next steps carefully. I needed to take control of the situation, not just for myself but for my kids. I couldn't let Lisa's actions dictate my worth or the direction of my life. It was time to make a plan, to put myself first, and to find a way to reclaim the power that had been stripped away from me. As I lay on Greg's couch that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt a strange sense of peace settle in. I was ready to confront the future, whatever it may hold. The anger and sadness would come and go, but I was learning that I had to take care of myself first if I wanted to emerge stronger from this mess. I was ready to start the next chapter of my life, and this time I would be the one writing it. Staying at Greg's gave me the breathing room I desperately needed. For the first few days, I focused on processing everything: the betrayal, the anger, the heartbreak. I went through the motions of day-to-day life, but I was also formulating a plan. I knew I couldn't just drift through this. I needed to make strategic decisions about my future. After a week of laying low and reflecting, I called a lawyer. I realized I had to be proactive about my situation. If I wanted to end the marriage, I needed to understand my rights, especially when it came to our kids and finances. The lawyer was a no-nonsense woman named Karen, who was direct and straightforward. I appreciated that about her. When I met with Karen, she laid out my options and helped me understand the legal landscape. "You have grounds for divorce, especially with the evidence you've gathered," she said. "You can file for divorce based on infidelity, and we can work to ensure you have custody arrangements for the kids that work in your favor." Listening to her made my heart race. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. I had genuine concerns about my kids' well-being. I wanted to make sure they were shielded from the fallout of Lisa's actions. The thought of them being caught in the middle of our mess made me sick. I was determined that they wouldn't suffer because of our choices. As I left her office, I felt a sense of empowerment wash over me. I was no longer a passive participant in my own life. I had a plan, and it felt good to take control. I spent the next few days figuring out my financial situation. I started compiling evidence for the divorce, organizing everything I had for when the time came. But while I was busy preparing, Lisa was trying to reach me. She sent numerous texts, begging me to talk, to come back home, to work on our marriage. I mostly ignored her. I knew that speaking with her would only make things more complicated. Every time I looked at my phone and saw her name, a wave of anger washed over me. I was still grappling with the feelings of betrayal and hurt, and I wasn't ready to face her yet. After about 10 days, I decided it was time for a more formal conversation. I needed to confront Lisa about our future. I called her to set up a meeting, making it clear that I wanted to talk about the divorce. When we met at a small coffee shop, I could feel the tension in the air. Lisa looked different, her hair and makeup done as if she were trying to impress me. "Mike," she started, her voice wavering, "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I'm really sorry for what I did. I know I messed up and I want to make it right." I studied her face, looking for any sincerity in her words. "Do you really?" I asked, my tone skeptical, "because it sure didn't feel like that when you were out with Mark. It felt like you were living a double life without a care for what it might do to me or the kids." She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, clearly unprepared for my confrontation. I understand that I hurt you and I'm not trying to downplay it, but I want to fight for our family. I want us to go to counseling again to work through this together. Counseling? I scoffed. After what you've done, you think a few sessions will fix this. It's not just about fixing us anymore. You've shattered my trust. I could see her visibly flinch at my words. I know, and I take responsibility for my actions, but can't we at least try for the kids? She said, desperation creeping into her voice. I took a deep breath, trying to maintain my composure. This isn't just about the kids, Lisa. This is about me too. You've made choices that I can't just overlook. I'm filing for divorce. Her face fell and I could see the tears welling up in her eyes. You can't be serious. You want to throw everything away. I thought we could still work this out. This isn't a situation that can be salvaged, I said firmly. You've made your bed and now you have to lie in it. I can't keep pretending that things are okay, and I won't put my kids through this toxic atmosphere any longer. She fell silent, and for a brief moment I could see the realization hit her. This was no longer a discussion about fixing things. This was about moving forward separately. I felt a mix of sadness and relief wash over me. I knew this was the right decision, even if it hurt both of us. I'll get a lawyer too, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to lose the kids. I nodded, recognizing her sincerity, but I also felt a pang of guilt. I didn't want to take the kids away from her, but I needed to protect myself and ensure they had a stable environment. We'll figure it out together, but I'm not going to be the one to back down. I've spent too long being the one who's been hurt. As we parted ways, I felt a strange mix of emotions. I was relieved to have made my position clear, but I was also filled with sadness. There was no other way but forward, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was losing a part of myself in this process. I had to remind myself that I was doing this for my own well-being and the well-being of my children. The following days were a whirlwind of emotions as I prepared for the next steps in the divorce process. I met with Corinne again to go over the divorce papers, and she explained the process in greater detail. I was nervous but also determined. I wouldn't let fear dictate my actions anymore. While wrestling with the tough decisions ahead, I made sure to keep my focus on the kids. I wanted to reassure them that they were loved and that this was not their fault. I scheduled family outings, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy in our lives despite the impending changes. One weekend, I took the kids to the park, watching them run around, their laughter ringing in the air. It was moments like these that reminded me of the importance of family, even if it was all about to change. I wanted them to know they were my priority and that they would always come first, no matter what happened between Lisa and me. As I sat on a bench watching them play, I felt a sense of resolve. I was finally reclaiming my life. No more lies, no more deceit. I could feel the weight beginning to lift. I was on a path toward healing, and while the road ahead would be difficult, I was determined to see it through. The next step was to officially file for divorce, and I was ready to take that leap. I had lost so much, but I also had the chance to start fresh. It was time to forge a new path, one where I could redefine who I was as a man and a father. I wouldn't allow this betrayal to define me. I was stronger than I had ever realized, and I was prepared to fight for the life I truly wanted. Filing for divorce was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever had to make. As I sat in Corinne's office, reviewing the paperwork, I felt a sense of finality wash over me. This was it. There was no turning back now. I was about to step into a new chapter of my life, one that was still filled with uncertainty but also possibilities. Are you sure about this, Mike? Corinne asked, her brow furrowed with concern. Once you file, it's going to change everything. It's not just a legal process, it's going to affect your family dynamic and the kids. I have to do this, I said, my voice steady. Lisa made choices that broke our marriage. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. My kids deserve better than living in a house filled with deceit. She nodded, understanding the gravity of my decision. All right. Then let's proceed. I'll file the papers and notify Lisa's lawyer. It's going to take some time, but we'll get through this. As I walked out of her office, I felt a mixture of relief and dread. The weight of the decision was heavy, but I also felt empowered. I was taking control of my life, fighting against the chaos that had infiltrated my marriage. But with that empowerment came the fear of the unknown. What would happen next? How would Lisa react? Later that week, I received a call from Lisa's attorney. They wanted to schedule a mediation session to discuss custody arrangements and asset division. The thought of sitting across from Lisa in a legal setting made my stomach churn, but I knew it was necessary. On the day of the mediation, I arrived early, pacing in the waiting area, rehearsing what I wanted to say. I wanted to remain calm and composed, but the anxiety was palpable. When Lisa walked in, she looked different, more put together than I had seen her in weeks, and it struck me how much she was trying to control the narrative. As we sat in the conference room, I could feel the tension in the air. I was acutely aware of every glance she threw my way, every nervous shift in her seat. The mediator, a kind-looking woman named Carol, introduced herself and explained the process. "Let's focus on finding a resolution that works for both parties," Carol said. "The priority here is the well-being of the children." I nodded, appreciating her approach, but I felt an underlying tension. I wasn't here to placate Lisa. I was here to protect my kids and make sure they had stability. As we began discussing custody, Lisa immediately tried to take control. "I believe that the kids should stay with me most of the time," she stated, her voice firm. "I'm their mother and they need a stable environment." I interjected, trying to maintain my composure. "Lisa, I want what's best for our kids, but you have to understand that they need both parents in their lives. I'm willing to share custody, but it has to be equal. They deserve to have time with both of us, and I'm committed to being present in their lives." The tension escalated, and I could see Lisa's frustration growing. "You're just trying to take them away from me. You think this is all about you, but it's not. You don't understand what I've been through." I felt a surge of anger at her words. "What you've been through? You made a choice, Lisa. You chose to betray our family. I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make sure our kids have a stable home. You need to put your feelings aside and think about them for once." The mediator tried to steer the conversation back on track, but the damage was done. Lisa and I were in a stalemate, both unwilling to budge. It was clear this was going to be a complicated process. After the mediation, I felt drained, but I also felt a sense of clarity. I had stood my ground for the sake of my children. This wasn't just about anger and revenge. It was about their future. I knew I had to dig deep and remain focused on what truly mattered. As the weeks passed, I continued to focus on the kids, trying to maintain a sense of normalcy amid the chaos. I took them to their favorite places, like the zoo and the local ice cream shop. I wanted them to know that even though their world was changing, my love for them would never waver. But Lisa wasn't giving up easily. She began to ramp up her efforts to paint herself as the better parent. She would send texts, often at odd hours, trying to manipulate the situation. "The kids need stability, Mike. You're causing so much stress," she would say. It was frustrating, but I refused to engage in her games. Then came the day when I received a text that changed everything. It was from Lisa, and it was straightforward. "I want to talk. Can we meet up?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, but another part was curious. What could she possibly want to say? She had made her choices, and I was done with the emotional roller coaster. But I agreed to meet, thinking that perhaps I could use this opportunity to gain insight into her state of mind. We chose a neutral spot, a quiet cafe where we could talk without distractions. When I arrived, I noticed Lisa was already there, fidgeting with her hands, clearly nervous. She looked up as I approached, her eyes momentarily filled with something resembling vulnerability. "Thanks for meeting with me," she said, her voice shaky. I didn't reply right away. I wanted to gauge her sincerity. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, her eyes darting around the room. "I realize now how much I've hurt you and the kids. I didn't mean for it to go this far." I crossed my arms, trying not to appear too open. "You say that, but it feels like you only care now that things are falling apart for you. What do you really want, Lisa?" She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to find the right words. "I want to be involved in our kids' lives. I want you to know that I'm committed to making things right. I'll go to therapy, work on myself, whatever it takes." I studied her face, searching for any sign of honesty. You can't just say those things to make it easier for yourself. You need to actually mean it. It's going to take more than words to fix this. I know, she replied, her voice softening. I'm scared, Mike. I'm scared of losing my family. I never wanted it to come to this. I sighed, feeling a mix of emotions swirling within me. You made choices, Lisa. It's going to take time to rebuild trust. I don't know if I can ever see you the same way again, but I'm willing to focus on the kids and make sure they're okay. That's my priority. She nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. I'm sorry. I truly am. I'll do whatever it takes. As we parted ways, I felt a strange sense of closure. I didn't know if her words were sincere, but I also recognized that I couldn't control her actions anymore. I needed to keep my focus on my journey. Determined to move forward, I concentrated on the kids and establishing a new routine. I set boundaries with Lisa, keeping the communication focused on co-parenting. I learned to compartmentalize my emotions, reminding myself that healing would take time, and I needed to give myself grace along the way. The divorce process continued, and while there were challenges, I felt a strange sense of strength building within me. I was no longer just a victim of circumstance. I was taking charge of my life. I was learning to navigate the complexities of co-parenting, balancing my emotions, and prioritizing my children above all else. As I moved toward finalizing the divorce, I realized that this journey was not just about the end of my marriage, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could redefine who I wanted to be for myself and my kids. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to thrive. And that made all the difference. The process of finalizing the divorce felt like a marathon that was finally reaching its end. After weeks of mediation sessions, discussions with lawyers, and countless emotional ups and downs, it was time to sign the papers. I could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short period. The journey had been tumultuous, but through it all, I had emerged stronger and more resilient. The day of the final hearing arrived, and I found myself feeling a mixture of anticipation and dread. I had prepared myself for this moment, but the reality of it was hitting harder than I expected. I knew Lisa would be there, and part of me wondered how she would handle the situation. Would she be remorseful, angry, or would she try to convince me that we could somehow make things work? As I walked into the courthouse, I took a deep breath, grounding myself in the knowledge that I was doing this for my kids and for my own peace of mind. I spotted Lisa sitting in the waiting area, and for a moment our eyes met. I could see the uncertainty in her expression, but I also noticed a flicker of determination. She had spent so long trying to manipulate the narrative. I wondered how she would react to the finality of our decision. The hearing itself was straightforward. Corinne represented me, and Lisa had her attorney by her side. Everything moved quickly as we went through the motions, discussing asset division, child custody, and other legalities. When it came time to finalize custody arrangements, I leaned forward, ready to advocate for what I believed was best for our kids. Your Honor, I began, my voice steady, I want to ensure that our children have a stable and loving environment. I'm committed to being involved in their lives, and I believe that shared custody is essential for their well-being. Lisa's lawyer interjected, trying to argue for more time with her. But I stood my ground, knowing this was about more than just winning a legal battle. It was about doing what was right for our kids. When the judge ruled in favor of a 50-50 custody arrangement, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had fought for my children, and they would have equal access to both parents. After the hearing, as we signed the final paperwork, I felt a strange mix of emotions. This was the end of our marriage, but it was also the beginning of a new chapter for all of us. Lisa looked at me, and for the first time in a long time I saw something different in her eyes, an understanding of the gravity of what we were doing. Mike, she said softly, her voice trembling, I hope we can co-parent effectively. I really am going to work on myself. I don't want to repeat the mistakes I made. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I hope you do, Lisa. Our kids deserve the best from both of us. Let's keep the focus on them moving forward. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of liberation. I had taken control of my life and faced my fears head-on. For so long, I had allowed the chaos of my marriage to dictate my emotions and my future, but now I was reclaiming my narrative. The following weeks were a whirlwind. I adjusted to my new routine as a co-parent, and while there were challenges, I found comfort in the fact that I was actively involved in my kids' lives. We established a schedule that worked for everyone, and I made it a point to prioritize quality time with them. I wanted them to feel secure and loved, even amidst the changes. I also took the opportunity to focus on my personal growth. I enrolled in a few classes at a community college, exploring interests I had put on hold while I was married. I began exercising regularly, rediscovering the joy in taking care of my body. It was a form of therapy for me. With every workout, I could feel the emotional weight I had carried for so long begin to lift. Through this journey, I learned a lot about myself. I discovered that I was stronger than I had ever realized. I had the power to shape my own future, and I was determined to make choices that reflected my values and priorities. And while the scars of betrayal might never fully fade, I learned to embrace them as part of my story rather than let them define me. I realized that healing was a process, one that required patience and self-compassion. I began to practice mindfulness, focusing on the present moment and appreciating the little joys in life. One evening, as I sat in the backyard watching my kids play, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They were happy and thriving, and that was all that mattered. I had fought hard to create a stable environment for them, and it was paying off. Their laughter filled the air, reminding me that amidst the chaos, there was still joy to be found. As summer turned into fall, I felt a renewed sense of hope. I was ready to embrace whatever the future held, no longer shackled by the past. I learned that it was possible to rebuild my life, to move forward with purpose, and to find happiness again. I started dating again, slowly, cautiously opening my heart to the possibility of love. Each encounter taught me more about what I wanted and needed in a partner. I was no longer looking for someone to complete me. Instead, I was looking for someone who would complement my life. Reflecting on the journey, I wanted to share some advice with anyone facing a similar situation. Life can throw unimaginable challenges your way, but you have the power to respond to them. Surround yourself with supportive people and don't shy away from seeking help when you need it. Take time to heal and remember that it's okay to feel a range of emotions. Above all, focus on what truly matters, your well-being and the well-being of those you love. Ultimately, my experience taught me that even in the face of betrayal, there is an opportunity for growth, healing, and new beginnings. The future is bright, and I'm ready to embrace it with open arms.